Everyone, I hope that you are doing well. We are continuing our journey through 4th edition as though it was the latest edition that has just been released. I was thinking the other day about these videos, and I've kind of been approaching it as though 4th edition was being released and kind of disregarding 5th edition. But I feel like I really want to approach it from the standpoint of, let's imagine that 4th edition is actually like 6th edition, where it's the next edition of the game. So that way I can talk more about 5th edition in the past tense as though it's the older edition of the game. And we can do some comparisons of things from that game as well, as opposed to just looking at it strictly from the standpoint of what would someone have thought about 4th edition when it was released, when it was actually released. Let's talk about it as though it is actually the new one, and we already do have 5th edition out there as well to compare it to. So I don't know if that really makes any difference as far as this video is concerned, but that's something I'm going to think about as I make some of the other videos, is to not talk about it as though it was released when it was actually released. But anyway, that's what we're doing here in these videos. But for this particular video, we're going to create another character. I've created a couple characters already. And this one, I'm trying to mix it up a little bit. So out on the Discord, I went and asked what kind of character we should create. I had a couple different options that I put out there. And based on those options, I'm going to go ahead and create a Tiefling Paladin. So we'll see what that is. I have not actually even looked at anything with regard to a Tiefling or a Paladin to see how they line up or anything. But we'll see it. We'll figure it out together as we go through this. So, but if you are interested in these videos, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to find some other ways that you can support the work, go down to the description. If you become a member of the channel, you get access to the videos a little bit early. And if you want to join the Discord server, that membership is through Ko-fi. So, but let's jump into this and have a look at what we're gonna start with. So, like I said, we are going to do a Tiefling Paladin, but so let's take a look at each of these things first and see what we're going to get. So for a Tiefling, oops, sorry. So a Tiefling, we're going to get a bonus to Intelligence and Charisma. So that's our bonuses to our ability scores that we're going to get. Along with our other things, including our Infernal Wrath. I'm just trying to make a mental note of some of these things. So the ability score bonus is the big thing I'm looking at. And then let's take a look at a Paladin for what we are looking for our key abilities. Our key abilities are Strength, Charisma, and Wisdom. And if we peek ahead at the powers, our powers are really going to be about Strength, Charisma. So it looks like you can kind of choose which of those two you're after. So like at first level for at-wills, you got a couple of them that are keyed off Strength and a couple that are Charisma, and then the same with your encounters. Okay, 2 Charismas, 2 Strengths, daily powers, Charisma, Strength, Charisma. And then at our utility prayers, those don't actually have a thing. And then for level 3, Strength, Charisma, Strength. So kind of following the same thing. So whether you were focused on having Strength as your major ability or Charisma, you will basically have half the options available to you. I mean, you can always, depending on how we do it, we could have high scores in both of those, and that way we have more. But if usually there's going to be one score that you're going to kind of go into a little heavier than the others. So we'll just keep that in mind depending on what we want to do. I also want to take a peek at some of the other bonuses you get. So if you look at some of the, I'm looking at the level 3 prayers here, and you can see that the hit gives you its plus Strength, but then you can push the target number equal to your Wisdom modifier. So, and then the same with this one, it's temporary hit points, with a bonus of your Wisdom modifier. So all those extra things seem to be tied to your Wisdom modifier. So that's something else to keep in mind. So, obviously with the key abilities being Strength, Charisma, and Wisdom, so the Wisdom is really what you're going to get as the additional thing that you can do for a power, whereas the hit is going to be based on either Strength or Charisma. depending on which powers you choose. So that's what we got: strength, charisma, and wisdom. And if we take a look back, we've got intelligence and charisma. So that's good. So a tiefling has a bonus to charisma, which is one of the key scores. We don't have a bonus to strength, but that's okay. We'll figure out what we want to do with that. So let's take a look back at the character creation guide that it has here. So you can see the steps that it goes through, and we will walk through these as they say here, but maybe not necessarily in this order. If you've watched these videos before, you know I kind of like to do them in a slightly different order based on, I like to capture all the information for one thing before I move on to the next one, which makes some things like feat and choosing equipments maybe a little more challenging, but maybe one of these days I'll actually follow it in this sequence, and we'll see how it goes. But anyway, we'll start with the race. We already know our race, and let's go ahead and start filling out our sheet. So I don't have a character name. I should have made that. I think last time I actually made a name, but I didn't do that this time. So this is a first level. It's going to be a paladin, and no paragon path, no destiny yet. We'll have 0 hit points. The race is going to be a tiefling. Size will be medium, that's on our page here for the tiefling. It's going to be a size of medium. Speed of 6 squares with low light vision. So we'll go ahead and do our base speed of 6 squares, and then I will write here that we have low light vision. And then we have our bonus to intelligence and charisma, and so what I will just do is I will do a bonus to intelligence and charisma, and I will put those there. There's also a box here where you could write that as well if you wanted to. I tend to just put them right there, and by putting it with a +2, just to kind of as my reminder that that's my bonus, that's not my actual score just yet. I will not do the height and weight and all those things. Those are things that when I publish these character sheets, I'll put them on my website. Eventually, I have not done the last 2, but I will get them out there. By the time you watch this, maybe I'll have them all out there. But that way you can decide for yourself what you want those things to be. Language is common and a choice of one other. Oh, that's a little different from the other ones we've done. So let's go ahead and figure that out. So we have common, and we get to choose another one. So that's going to be over here back in chapter 2, where we have the making characters. There is a part that talks about somewhere in here. It talks about languages. And so here we go. So there's our languages to choose from. This is page 25 in the player's handbook. And so you can see the list of languages that we can choose from. This is just who speaks it. So common is spoken by pretty much everybody. And then we get to choose another one. This is where if, depending on the adventure that you're running, you may get some hints from your dungeon master as to what languages would be in play, or what kinds of monsters you're going to be fighting. If you're going to be, like, say, if you're playing 5th edition, you're playing Storm King's Thunder, well, then maybe you want to have your tiefling speak giant for some reason. I am going to choose, I think I will just choose, I feel like primordial might be a good one, but I'm going to keep it simple. We'll just say goblin. We'll just say that this tiefling has decided to speak goblin. And that's our one other language that they get to choose. So that's different. Our other 2 characters didn't have that. I think they just spoke common, and then I think we did a dwarf rogue, yeah, and that they spoke dwarfish. Is that what it is? Dwarven. So that one we get a little more of an option to it. Skill bonus, we get a +2 to bluff and a +2 to stealth. So we will go down here and we will write that in bluff and in stealth. Get those, and it'll update, do our calculations for us. And then we get some nice feats here. So first we have Blunt Hunt, a +1 racial bonus to attack rolls against bloodied foes. So that's good. And we will put the page number for reference. That is page 48. And then we have fire resistance. So you have resist fire 5 + 1/2 your level. That's pretty sweet. So if you're fighting any creature that has some sort of weapon that does fire damage, then you want your tiefling to be front and center in that exercise. Let me turn on, I realize that I don't have my my mouse highlight going. So there we go. Then finally we have Infernal Wrath, and Infernal Wrath is this power. This is an encounter power, just a minor action, and you can channel your fury to gain a +1 power bonus to your next attack roll against an enemy that hit you since your last turn. If your attack hits and deals damage, add your charisma modifier as extra damage. So it's a minor action. So if you get attacked by somebody, then you get to use your Infernal Wrath once per encounter as a minor action to essentially hit them back and then deal some extra damage. The nice thing with this is that we're doing a paladin, and a paladin is a defender, which means they're going to be up there in the fight doing a lot of attacking and getting attacked. And so the Infernal Wrath will come in quite handy as they're in that position. So that's pretty good stuff. And I think that is the gist of what we will get from the Tiefling. So we've got all that stuff written down. Let's shift our attention to the class now. So just to reset everybody, if we go to the character creation, we chose our race, we made note of all those things, and now we get to look at our class. So we'll start making note of all the different class things. And we're going to do a paladin. Again, this is a defender. So as a defender, we already have a fighter that we've created. Now we're going to make another defender. So this is a paladin is also a defender. And based on the information provided in the player's handbook, it says if you have party, or it might be in the Dungeon Master's Guide, if you have parties that are that will have multiples of a particular character role, the defender would be a good one to double up on, because you're going to get another character that can get out there in the front and in melee combat and be a barrier between the enemies and your allies. So that's a good thing to have the extra defender out there. So this fits perfectly with what a normal party would have, or a well-rounded party would have. Our power source is divine. Key abilities were strength, charisma, and wisdom, as we talked about. And then we have our armor proficiencies of cloth, leather, hide, chainmail, scale, plate, light shield, and heavy shield. So they can do quite a bit of different armor. Weapon proficiencies are simple melee, military melee, and simple ranged. And then we get a holy symbol, also proficient in that. So we'll cover all those when we get to the point where we're getting equipment, and we'll use that to help us decide which equipment that we need. And then we get bonuses to our fortitude, our reflex, and our will. So across the board, we get a +1 to all of those. And so we will come here and, we'll go there, and we will get a +1 bonus to each of those from our class. And we'll just make a note of that right away on there. Next, we have hit points at first level is 15 plus our constitution score. So this is going to be first level character, and everything when your max hit points is going to be plus your constitution score, but we don't know our constitution score yet. So I'm just going to put a 15 plus in there as a reminder that it's going to be 15 plus our constitution score. And then healing surges per day is 10 plus our constitution modifier. And again, we don't know our constitution modifier, so I will just put a placeholder that is 10 plus our constitution modifier. So that way we've got those references in there. It does also list hit points gained per level, but since it's the first level character, we don't need to worry about that. For trained skills, we get religion. So let's go ahead and mark that one. This is a trained skill, and we get a +5 bonus for being trained in that. And then we get to choose 3 more from this list: diplomacy, endurance, heal, history, insight, intimidate, and religion. We're already trained in religion. You can't be trained more than once. So diplomacy, endurance, heal, history, insight, and intimidate. I think for what we want to do, just choosing a few in here, I think we're going to go with endurance, heal, and intimidate, I think, as our 3 that we get. So let's do that. So we got endurance will be a 5, heal will be a 5, and then intimidate will also be a 5. So those are the skills that we're trained in. We get a +5 for everything that we are trained in, and that's what we've chosen there. And then we have build options, and we have our class features. So let's take a look ahead at those. The build options are just your quick builds that you could do. as you're creating a character, if you don't want to spend the time making the decisions for yourself, you can just use these quick build options, and it's essentially kind of like a subclass in that it's making these choices for you, and you can just say, yes, this is what I want. I want an avenging paladin that kind of has this description, and here's the things you can do to start with, whereas a protecting paladin has this description. Here's the things that you can get to start with. Saves you a lot of that decision making if you really just want to jump right into it and get the character created. You can also use these as a starting point and say, hey, I like the idea of this, but I really don't care for that power. I'd like to swap it out with something. These are just guides. These are just kind of to help you get started quickly. So you can decide to use these or not use these. I'm not going to use these because I want to go through the process entirely. So we'll skip over that. It makes a note of the implement and how while you have a holy symbol as your implement for casting your prayers, you can get a bonus with that because you are proficient with that. And so I'm trying to look at some of the details of it. You can add its enhancement bonus to the attack rolls and the damage rolls of powers. So if you're holding a magic holy symbol, then you get to add that when you're using that implement for those powers. So something to keep in mind. And then there's the deities that you can choose. Now, I didn't write a deity in the character sheet. There's a place to put a deity here, so you can choose one. Generally, they're going to have an alignment, and there's a whole background. But if you go back to chapter 2 and look at the deities, it'll tell you some more information about them, and you can decide which one makes sense for you. I'll leave that one blank because it's not necessarily for the mechanics of building the character. It's this more of a flavor thing for how you want to play that character. So you can just reference that in the book and decide which one makes the most sense for the character that you are wanting to play. And then we get into our class features. So the first thing we have is Channel Divinity, and you get 2 Channel Divinity powers, and this is where it gets a little bit confusing, and let me flip over to the Channel Divinity here. So to our powers here. So the first thing is Channel Divinity. Now, Channel Divinity is a power, and there are 2 types of Channel Divinity that you get. You get Divine Metal and Divine Strength, but these are still just a single power called Channel Divinity. So it's an encounter power, which means that if you use Channel Divinity Divine Metal during an encounter, you have used your Channel Divinity power. You cannot then also use Divine Strength in that same encounter. So you only would get that back once you take a short rest and you recover your encounter power. So just important to keep in mind that Channel Divinity is the power, and then what's the subtext here is just the type of Channel Divinity that it is, but you still can only use it once. So something to keep in mind. We will go ahead and write that down. Divinity. And we got Divine Metal. And Divine Strength. There we go. And of course, we will do our page numbers. This is on page 91 of the Player's Handbook. So that is one encounter power, just 2 different types of it. Next, we have Divine Challenge. This is another power that we got. This one is an at-will power, also a minor action. This one is nice because we get to mark a creature we just get to mark a creature. So there's not really any special conditions. It's got a lot of information about what that means and what you can do with that, but that's the idea. So this one is an at-will power. And as a paladin, you will likely be using this a lot because it is at will. It is also a minor action, so pretty much on most turns you would be able to use your Divine Challenge. Next, we have Lay on Hands. Lay on Hands is our another at will power that we get access to. And this one is special because we can use this power a number of times per day equal to our wisdom modifier with a minimum of 1, but only once per round. So if we have a high wisdom score and therefore a high wisdom modifier, we could actually use this more than the 1 time per day. Something to keep in mind as we're assigning our ability scores, we may want to lean a little bit towards putting something higher in our wisdom. It also is a minor action, and this is what gives you some healing ability, which is nice. And then we get into the actual powers. And this is where we kind of have to make a decision. Now, if we go back to the actual character creation thing here, you'll notice that it has choose your race, choose your class, and the next thing that you do is you do your ability scores, then your skills, then your feats, and then you choose your powers. So I am skipping ahead. This is one of the cases where I go out of order because I feel like I know what I want to do with the character, and I'm already in the chapter of the book where the powers are located. So it seems to me to make sense to just go ahead and select my powers at this point. I don't really need to know what my ability scores are yet. I do have to kind of know which ones I'm going to try to lean towards, whether in the case of the Paladin, whether that's going to be intelligence or strength or wisdom. But I don't need to, strength, charisma, or wisdom. But I don't need to know the specific score at this point. So I don't feel that I need to wait all the way down here to select my powers. I like to select them right here. That's my idea behind that. So with that said, let's go back and take a look at our Paladin and the powers that they have. So at first level, we get to choose 2 at-will powers from this list. So we have to decide whether we're going to want to have strength or charisma as our biggest power, because that kind of decides what we're going to go with. So since we get a bonus to our charisma from being a tiefling, that would be the logical choice to choose. But we don't have to. We can always go back and just adjust when we choose the ability scores. We can assign them in a way that gives our strength a pretty good score also. So we don't have to. We're not locked in just because the tiefling gives us a bonus in a certain area that I have to use that bonus. You could see that if you go back and watch the dwarf rogue video, that you can make it work no matter what. That's completely up to you. The array gives you some flexibility, and we're gonna use a different approach this time when we do the ability scores. So we'll see if that gives us some more flexibility. But I am going to use charisma, since I do have an ability score that from my race that matches an ability score that I could use for my powers. I'm going to use charisma as my main ability score, and so to lean into that and keep things simple, I am going to choose Bolstering Strike and Enfeebling Strike as my 2 at-will powers for that. So Bolstering Strike and Enfeebling Strike. That's those. And we will do Player's Handbook 92. All right, and then I get to choose 1 Encounter Prayer. And again, we have 2 that use Charisma and then 2 that use Strength. So we're looking at Fearsome Smite and Shielding Smite. Let's see what we get with those. 2 weapon damage plus Charisma modifier. Until the end of the next turn, the target takes a penalty to attack rolls equal to your Wisdom modifier. You need to keep that in mind. And then Shielding Smite, you do that same damage, but until the end of your next turn, 1 ally within 5 squares of you gains a power bonus to armor class equal to your Wisdom modifier. So interesting. So we are either impacting, giving a penalty to an enemy that we attacked, or we are giving a bonus to an ally that is within 5 squares of us. So that's our choice we're essentially making here. I think I want to give the bonus to... actually, no, I take that back. Since we used Intimidate as one of our skills, that kind of implies we're making a paladin that maybe is meant to be scary. So that would lean into the notion that this would cause some fear in our enemies as we make this attack. So we are going to choose Fearsome Smite as our power here. And then we get 1 daily prayer. And so we have, this one is Charisma, Paladin Judgment is Strength, and then Radiant Delirium is also Charisma. So we'll take a look at those. We'll focus on the Charisma ones. 3d8 plus Charisma damage. Once per round, the target takes 1d8 damage after making any attacks on its turn, and then a save ends. So that's kind of nice. So you deal a big chunk of damage, and then when that enemy makes an attack, they're going to take more damage from that. So that's pretty cool. And then the other one is Radiant Delirium. Still 3d8 charisma damage, and the target is dazed until the end of your next turn. In addition, they take a -2 penalty to armor class. And then on a miss, you deal half damage, and the target is dazed until the end. So you still deal quite a bit of damage here. So what I like, oh, sorry, this one does, this one also has a miss. So half damage, the target takes 1d4 damage. So they still take that damage. That's, you know, do you want to deal extra damage on the creature, ongoing damage, or do you want to be, give them a penalty to their armor class? I think I'm going to go the other way with this one. And I want to deal that extra damage. So before I chose Fearsome Smite because I kind of like that scariness with the penalty for them, but I think I'll do On Pain of Death for this one because that sounds pretty cool. All right, and that is our powers that we get to choose at first level for a paladin. So let's head back to our character creation. And so we did the race, we did the class, we even skipped ahead, we did the skills, and we did the powers. So again, I'm not going to do the ability scores just yet. I don't know, I just like to do all the math at one time. So now we'll see that there will be a little bit of a issue with the feats, but we're going to go ahead and skip ahead to the feats. If you want to do it the other way and do the ability scores first before you do the feats, that is perfectly fine. The thing that I like with the feats is I like making all these choices first and then just finishing out with the math. That's just how I like to do it. It also seems to me to result in less flipping around in the book when I'm making a character. Now, obviously, the one challenge we have with the feats is that a lot of these have a prerequisite that is a specific ability score. And if I don't know my ability scores, then it might be hard for me to do that. But my feeling on that is that, like, so for example, if I was making a character that would get a benefit from Far Shot, where it increases the projectile range by 5 squares, if I was making a character that had ranged attacks like that, there's a pretty good chance my dexterity is going to be above 13. I would be assigning a high dexterity score to that, and my dexterity score that I would be assigning probably would be at least a 16. So the minimums that you have here are, you know, they're not so high where you got to be really specific with it. If you're going to get use out of that particular feat, odds are you're going to already have an ability score that would meet that, and it's not going to be a big deal. So, but again, that's just how I do it. Feel free to do it the way it's written in the book if that works better for you. I am going to, I try to keep this simple as we're going through these creation ones because I don't want to spend a ton of time looking through all of the different details. The two things I'm going to look for is something that would be appropriate for a paladin or something that's appropriate for a tiefling. And other than that, I might just do things that are like where you get to choose more skill training and stuff like that, where it's more generic for anybody. But let's just take a look if I see anything that will maybe start under I don't see a tiefling specific one. There's probably something that's like Infernal or whatever, but like Hellfire Blood, there you go. So +1 attack and damage with fire and fear powers. So the one power that we chose, the daily power, I know was a fear power. So we could choose that one. Yeah, let's do that. So Hellfire Blood is our feat. That is on the first page. And the actual description of that is on page 195. All right, now we have our feat. Back to our character creation. We've done our race, class, skills, feats, powers. Let's talk about equipment. This is where it gets a little tricky because we have to deal with money that we have to spend. So as a new character, we have 100 gold to spend. I'll flip down to the equipment section here. And it lets you know that you have 100 gold pieces to spend on armor, weapons, and any adventuring gear that you're after. So the defenders are always a little bit difficult because they're the ones that are getting right up into the enemy's faces, and you want to make sure that they've got really good armor, and then they're going to need really good melee weapons, and some of that gets expensive very quickly. So we got to be mindful of that. Now, if we go back and we look at our paladin, where's my paladin? There it is. So I'll flip back and forth a little bit, but proficiencies for armor: cloth, leather, hide, chainmail, scale, plate, light shield, heavy shield. So we can use a shield, and then we really want to try to get the best armor that we can. So plate would be the absolute best. So let's take a look at what we're looking at here. Chainmail, that's going to cost 40 gold. Plate armor is going to cost 50 gold. So we only have 100 gold to work with. That's kind of a lot. So we want to keep that in mind. But you can see the leather's not going to really get it done for our paladin. Hide, it'd be okay, but you're really looking at chainmail or scale is what you want to be getting here. So, and the scale armor is going to get, and plate. The plate armor is going to get that +8 armor bonus, which is really nice, but it does cost half of our gold that we have to work with. Let's look ahead a little bit and just take a second to look at proficiencies for weapons. Simple melee, military melee, and simple ranged is what we have for weapons. So let's take a look at our weapons and see what we have to work with here. So we have simple melee and military melee, and then simple ranged is what we have to choose from. I think, we don't need to worry too much about ranged. I think we're going to be a defender. We're going to be right up there in everybody's face. So we could see how much a ranged weapon of some sort would cost, but I think we mostly want to stick to the melee weapons. Since we're proficient with the military melee, let's take a look at what some of these cost. A two-handed, so something that's going to really do some substantial damage. So like the flail, that's 2d6 damage. The great axe, 1d12. But you can see the price of these now. So if we're spending 50 on our armor, and now I'm going to spend another 25 or 30 on the weapon, we're starting to hit our limit there in our money that we have to spend. And let's take a look finally ahead. A standard adventurer's kit is 15 gold. And then you can get a holy symbol, which was something that would be important for us as a paladin, is 10 gold. So we need 25 gold to really get the adventuring gear that we want. So what we could do, if we spent every penny that we had, we could get our plate armor for 50. And then we get we just get one weapon in the form of so we'd have to get let's get the heavy flail, 25 gold. That puts us up to 75 gold that we've spent, and then we need 25 gold for our standard adventurer's kit and our holy symbol. We've spent every penny that we have. We're going into it without any gold left over, but we've gotten some pretty good stuff to work with. So let's go ahead and make a note of that. I will put I'm going to go ahead and write it in the attack workspace, I think, up here. So we're going to do the heavy flail and the attack bonus for the heavy flail is a +2. Oh, that's your proficiency. Sorry. So we have our proficiency, and I will put that in there. So it's +2 for the proficiency. And it's going to be a 2d6 damage. So we'll write this one down here. And it's 2d6. All right, you'll notice we do not add our proficiency bonus to the damage. And it weighs 10 pounds. It's flail. It does not actually have any special properties. So that's what we get for our weapon. We'll fill out the rest of the numbers as we get later on. For the armor, we are going to do the plate armor, which is going to cost us 50 gold. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. So we're going to get the armor. This is heavy armor, so we just get a straight +8 from that armor. But we do have a check penalty and a speed penalty. So we need to factor that in to here. This is going to be a -1 for our speed because this armor is very heavy. So it's going to deduct from our speed. And then we have a -2 check penalty that we have to put down here. You'll notice that there are some boxes here for some of these skills, and those are for us to record where we have a check penalty because we're wearing this heavy armor. It's hard to move, so naturally our acrobatics checks are not going to be so good. Our athletics checks are not going to be so good. Our endurance is not so good. Our stealth is going to be not so good, and our thievery will be not so good. So we have a penalty right off the bat for all of those different things, and that's what the -2 there is. And I think that will take care of our plate armor. So I'll make a note that we have plate armor here. There we go. And then we'll look ahead and I'll just make a note of our adventuring gear that we bought. So we're going to have a standard adventurer's kit. Sure. Spelling. And then we will get a holy symbol, which will come in handy when we're using some of our powers and our prayers that we have. And then, you can look at, if you want, sometimes you like to write out each of the things because like you have 2 sun rods. So you might want to put those specifically on here to keep track of what they are. And then your rations and things like that as well. So we did not get any ranged weapons that have projectiles, so we don't have to buy any ammunition. This character is purely focused. They have 1 weapon that they will use, and they're going to get right up into the fray and do that. So there we go. That is our equipment. Let's run back to character creation, race, class, skills, feats, powers, equipment. There we go. We've made all of those decisions. Now we can start filling in the numbers. So let's start with our ability scores themselves. I am going to do things differently. If you watched prior videos, you may know that I was not a fan of the point buy system, but I have decided to give it a try here because if you look at it, the standard array gives you these numbers that you can use, and you can assign those to the ability scores however you desire. The point buy system, to me, it gets a little complicated. So I generally try to avoid it because it's just, it's just a lot of having to keep track of how I want to spend these. What do I get? I get 22 points that I can spend to try to increase different ability scores. The interesting thing, though, is that it gives you this mapping here. This is a whole, and essentially that's kind of like a whole new set of arrays that you have. The standard array is 16, 14, 13, 12, 11, and 10. But here I can choose from these other ones that I can, maybe try to help get me some better combinations than what that standard array is going to get me. So if I look on here, I can see that there's a couple where I've got a 17 and a 15 as my top. So, if we start with the 16, 14, 13, 12, that's where you're kind of in this range up here. You'll notice the nice thing about these is that the bottom one is going to be a 10. So your modifier for that is going to be a 0. But some of these, you get a modifier for that low score is going to be a -1. And you want to keep that in mind. So now if you have a skill ability that you don't think you're going to use a whole lot, then that might be okay. But if you feel like you're going to want to at least be at 0 for your modifier across the board, then you're going to want to make sure you stick to one of the ones that has a 10 in it. So I think like if I look at this one, I get 2 16s and then a 12 and then some 10s. This one is a 17, a 15, and 11. So this one I do have an 8, but I think that's the one I'm going to go for. You can get really, if you really want to specialize in one area, then you can go, all out and then have, get an 18 and something. And especially if you put that in your one that you get a +2, because I think you're allowed to have a score that's at 20. It might be a limit. I'm going to try to find it. It might be that you can't have a score higher than 18. But I do not recall if that is a thing. So I'm not finding it here, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time looking for it. But if someone knows, please throw that down in the comments whether or not you can have a starting score at first level that is higher than an 18 or not. But I'm not going to choose one of those anyway. I'm going to choose one of these ones that is going to give me a, I think this one right here, that's going to be giving a 17 and a 15. Actually, I take that back. I think I want to have, I'm torn. I like no, I'm going to go with it. 17, 15, 12, 11, 10, 8. That's the one I'm going to go for. That's going to give me a little bit extra on the one. Now I have to factor in that my powers that I'm using are going to use charisma, and then most of the little extra bonuses I get with those powers are going to be based on wisdom. So I want to keep that in mind. But my melee weapon is going to be based on strength if I'm attacking with my melee weapon just directly with a basic attack. And my armor class is going to be based on constitution. So I've got a lot of scores that I kind of want to keep in mind. Now all the powers, because I chose the powers that are going to use charisma, that's where I'm going to go with my big score. So we're going to go 17, 15, 12, 11, 10, 8. And I think what we'll do is we will go ahead and put the 17 in charisma, and then that way with my +2, that's going to bring that up to a 19. So I'm going to get a super awesome charisma score. I'm going to make the assumption, if somebody tells me differently, that I can go above 18 at the first level. So if somebody changes that and says no, at first level you can't, then oh well, I'm homebrew for those rules. So and then the next one is 15. Now my next things that I really want to be focused on are strength, constitution, wisdom. I feel like constitution is the one I really want to focus on next because I want a high armor class. So I'm going to go ahead and put the 15 into that. And then I think I want my next one probably to be strength, which is going to be a 12 for that, which is not going to be great. I'm not going to be a very strong paladin. And then finally, I will do my wisdom is the next really important one, and that'll be the 11. So for my wisdom, and then my last two scores I get based on this array are going to be a 10 and an 8. And I will do, well, I guess I'll put the 10 in dexterity, and I'll put the 8 in intelligence, and that way my +2 will bring that up to a 10, and I won't have any that have a negative modifier. So that's what we've got. That's what I came up with. So, I had to make some compromises here because I'm going to have a really good charisma score, which most of my prayers are going to use charisma. So unless I'm doing just a basic attack with my heavy flail where I'm just going to use my strength, I'm going to do pretty well with my attacks based on that 19. My constitution is a 15, which will be decent as far as the bonus that I'll get for that. And then the other ones are just okay. The wisdom, the minimum that you have with those bonus things is usually a 1. So, and if it's not, I'll be missing out on a little bit of my extra that I could get there. But I think that probably makes sense. If you wanted to, you could flip the strength and wisdom scores, and that would give you a +1 bonus for wisdom. But I'm not going to worry about that for this one. We'll just run with it. All right. So that is our ability scores. So let's head back to our page here. So now we have done steps 1 through 7. We didn't do them in order, but we got there. And the next thing we have to do is actually fill in the numbers. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll start here at the top. Ability modifier. So there is a page that tells you how to calculate the ability modifier. Right here tells you what it is. So the strength is going to be a 1, constitution is going to be a 2, dexterity and intelligence will both be 0s, wisdom will also be a 0, and then the charisma is going to be a 4. And then we get to do modifier plus half level, which because we're at level 1, that half level is going to be a 0, so we don't get anything there. So we'll just use those as is. And there are those values. And then what we can do is start carrying those values over to here. So we're going to use the highest of the two to choose from. So fortitude is the higher of either strength or constitution. In our case, it's going to be constitution. So we will put a 2 there. And then it's going to be 10 plus half level, which would be just a 10, which means our fortitude is a 13. Then we get the same process for reflex, but those are both 0s. And then we get a 10, which makes our reflex a 11. And then the ability score that carries up is a 4 for our will. And with our 10, that means our will is going to be a 15. So pretty good there. 10 plus half level for the armor class. And I will circle back. I believe our feat that we chose, just to double check, and let's take a look at the feat. It was, I believe that was an attack. I don't think we'll need that just yet. It's going to be a that is going to be extra attack rolls and damage. So that's not something we're going to add to our armor class. That's something that we will do on attack rolls. And so our armor class is then going to be the 18. Here our dexterity is a 0 and half level is a 0. So our initiative is actually still just 0. Mistake. If anybody called it out earlier in the video, there's an armor penalty field right there that I put that in the wrong place. So that's our check penalty for our speed. Goes right there. I put it over in miscellaneous instead of armor. So apologize for that confusion. And there we go through that. I think we're good. Now let's work our way down. All right, now we know our Constitution score is a 15 and our max HP is a 15 plus our Constitution score, which means that's going to be a 30. Bloodied is going to be half of that, and our surge value is going to be half of that, and you always round down, so that makes that a 7. And then our surges per day is 10 plus our Constitution modifier. Our Constitution modifier is a 2, which makes that a 12. And now we have our hit points. We will start the day with 1 action point. Moving on down, we get to skills, and you'll notice that this automatically, the character sheet automatically filled in all of the different abilities from up above. So we have what we have, and there's not a lot of goodness in these skills. Intimidate is pretty good. Bluff, interestingly enough, is pretty good. We did okay even with our penalty for endurance, and heal is okay. But when it comes to thievery, not the best, and stealth, not so good. Perception, insight, those are not so good. You can see those are just 0. So we are not going to be the skill monkeys for this party. With our passive insight, with both of those being 0, that means our passive insight and passive perception are just going to be a 10. And now we get to look at our weapons and fill out our attack workspace here. So our ability, the heavy flail, is a melee weapon, and so we are going to use our strength modifier for it. So we'll go ahead and put the 1 there. Our half level is a 0, and that is what we're going to get. So a +3. If we're making just a basic attack, it is going to be a +3. As far as the damage, we do get to add that ability score, but oh, sorry, I forgot about our feat. We get a +1 bonus to our attack rolls and a +1 bonus to the damage roll. So there we go. So it's actually a +4 for the heavy flail to the attack, and then our damage will be a 2d6. And if we do that math, it's going to be a 2d6 plus 2 as our damage. And that's our basic attack with the flail. Let's take a look at one of our powers. That would be a power that we would use pretty frequently, and see what that looks like for our paladin. So we have, for our powers, we have bolstering strike and enfeebling strike were the 2 that we went with. These will attack with charisma versus armor class. So let's go ahead and we'll just write one of those in here, and we'll just do bolstering strike. So as part of our worksheet. So this is going to be, we want to know what the attack is versus the armor class. So the defense is going to be armor class. That's what the power indicates on it. So armor class, and it is going to be charisma. So it's going to be the same as what we have with our heavy flail, because you're going to be attacking with your melee weapon on this. So we'll be attacking with our heavy flail. So we get all the same, but the difference is that the attack is going to be with charisma instead of strength. So if we want to adjust that, so we would change this ability score to our charisma score, or modifier, which is a 4. And so that means that this would make this a +7. So that's a +7 when we use bolstering strike. Just this up here is just our basic attack that we would make, in which case we would just be using strength, and it's only going to be +4. So you can see the value of using those powers instead of just using a basic attack. And then the damage that it's going to do is 1 weapon damage plus charisma modifier. So that is, the weapon damage on this one is 2d6. And then you're going to add your charisma modifier, which is a 4. So you'll get 2d6 plus 4 damage. And then in addition to that, you gain temporary hit points equal to your wisdom modifier. Our wisdom modifier is unfortunately 0. And this is not one that says that it's a minimum of 1. It just says your wisdom modifier. So we're not going to really get much from that at this point. Now, at some point when we reach level 4, we will get an ability score increase, and we can bump up that wisdom modifier to a 12, in which case our modifier then goes up to a 1. So bump the score up to a 12, and again, the modifier goes to a 1. And again, you could have swapped your strength and your wisdom. If you wanted to do that, then your attack bonus here for your basic attack would be less, because you wouldn't have that strength modifier there. But maybe that's a good choice that you'd want to make. For us, I'm going to stick with it. I'm not going to go back and try to change anything. We will just go with that. All right, we've made our way through the whole thing. We have filled in the numbers. The only stuff left to do on here is to fill in all the details. You can fill out your personality, mannerisms, background. You need to get rid of that gold because we spent every bit of it. And then we give it a name and all that sort of stuff. So that's I'll leave that to anyone who wants to grab this character sheet and customize it for their own purposes. But that is our Tiefling Paladin. I think we got a lot of good stuff here in this, and I think we managed to combine a couple interesting things here. The Tiefling, looking at it, we got a really good charisma from that Tiefling, but the intelligence didn't really line up with much that we were trying to do for the Paladin, so that kind of made that a little difficult. Using the point buy arrays might have gotten us a little something by giving us a little bit of a constitution maybe than we would have had, because we had a 15 versus what would have been a 14, but we still essentially have the same bonus. So it's interesting to use that. So it gives you some more options to choose from as you're trying to figure out what the best ability scores are for that. So, but that is our Tiefling Paladin, and I hope that was helpful for you if you are working on creating some 4th edition characters. And so going through this process with some different combinations hopefully helps you figure out how to use the sheet and how to make all those correct decisions. So at some point I will get these character sheets up onto my website so that you can download them and then you can customize them however you desire. So if I missed something when I was going through this, if I interpreted something wrong, absolutely put it in the comments. Just help me learn. I mean, you can play this game for years and years and years, and there's still basic things that you just overlook or you just forget about. And so, certainly, point those out just to keep me honest with everything. Again, like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you want to help in other ways, you can become a channel member and you'll get early access to the videos. If you want to be part of the Discord server where we kind of talk about some things, not a lot of traffic on the Discord server just yet, but I do post some polls out there to ask what kind of characters to create next. And so that's something that we do out there as well. And, if more people start talking on it, then we will talk more about D&D and 4th edition. So I hope you enjoy that. Hope you found it helpful. Until next time, take care.